All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Equine Photo School. Now, make sure that you're subscribing to the podcast, that you're subscribing to us on YouTube, following us on social media at Equine Photo School, and check out the website, equinephotoschool.com. I'll put it right here for you guys so you know how to spell it and everything. It's pretty straightforward. But that website is really the hub of the wheel. That's where you're going to find blog posts. You're going to find videos like this. You're going to be able to listen to the podcast. All of it goes right there to equinephotoschool.com. Okay, let's get into this color temperature. As you can see behind me, got it up on the whiteboard. We're going to talk about your color temperature and make sure that you guys are nailing that in your shots. So when you post them on social media, you don't have people like me going through there and going, oh man, if only they had nailed their white balance, this would look so good. But unfortunately, it's like yellow and kind of weird, or there's like this weird blue tinge to it, and man, it just does not look right. People's skin tones look awful when you don't get this nailed in right. Or there's like tint, and it could look weird. It can have green or magenta kind of tint to it too. We're going to get into that and more. But first, let's talk about color temperature. What is it? What's the scale? What does it all mean? Tell me, Oli. I'm waiting for you. Come on. All right, let's get into it. Okay, you basically have a scale here from red this way. Sound effects are included, folks. To blue. What am I trying to do here? All right, that's blue. Back this way. And then they kind of converge, you know, in the middle. But anyway, you have this whole scale. This whole scale from red to blue. And often what you'll see in the middle here is kind of a yellow. As it fades from like really red and it gets towards the center here, you're going to see it pass through the yellow, kind of a yellowish sort of zone. Don't have a yellow marker here handy, so whatever. We describe this on like a number line here, and we describe it in Kelvin, which is a capital K for Kelvin, and it's degrees Kelvin. And in science, you've probably learned that Kelvin, 0 degrees Kelvin, is absolutely 0 degrees. Where 0 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius, those aren't actually no temperature at all. But 0 degrees Kelvin is actually no temperature whatsoever. Nothing is moving. There's no temperature. Anyway, science. So in our like kind of red zone here at the very, very end down here, we're going to be looking somewhere around 1900 Kelvin. So this is around 1900 Kelvin, degrees Kelvin. And that's going to be a very red tone. Like you'll see a lot of red coming through. And then all the way at the other end, all the way here to blue, down here is like 12,000 degrees Kelvin. So hopefully you guys can see that from 1900 to 12,000 degrees Kelvin. And so light is coming out, and we can measure that in degrees Kelvin. Now in this kind of middle, in the middle of the road here is around 5,000 degrees Kelvin right there. Kind of more or less in the middle, and this is kind of more or less the playground where we're going to spend most of our time here. But if we look at, say, you know, what does all this mean, right? So we've got, for an example, down here you're going to look at like the sky, and that's going to be, you know, like very, very blue. You've seen a blue sky before. That's 12,000 degrees Kelvin light. And then down here on this other end here, say tungsten. This is like candlelight. This is a tungsten light bulb. This is like that very harsh, dark orange, yellow, you know, kind of really close to that red range here. It's going to be way, you know, it's going to be way down here in this area. Your sky is going to be way down there in that area. And then in the middle here, you've got just plain old daylight. So in the sunlight is like right here, smack. It's kind of balanced. It's very neutral, kind of colored. You might even see that as like just beyond that, just here a little bit on the lower end of the scale, you'll see like fluorescent lights. And then a little bit like there. And then a little bit past here is like cloudy. Now you might see some of these things on your camera. So if you are looking at your mirrorless camera or DSLR camera, on the top or sometimes in the menu setting, you can see tungsten light, fluorescent light, daylight light, cloudy, daylight light, cloudy, and then sky, you know, like a normal blue sky or shade. Sometimes they call that shade, where you're not getting direct sunlight, you're just getting the sky, the blue of the sky reflecting in, and that's the light that's coming in. So what can you do to change this? So if you're shooting in broad daylight, you want your colors to be accurate. You know, if you're shooting outside, super easy, you just switch that to daylight, no problem on your camera. Your camera has what they call white balance, WB. Let's just put a little thing here. So your WB is your white balance. And you can try auto white balance, AWB for auto white balance. And that's what most people start out using. You just switch it to auto because you're like, oh, this is all confusing and I don't know what to do, and I'm just gonna let this little tiny black box do all the thinking for me. So you put it on auto mode, and then you wonder why everything's a mess. Because auto mode, unless it's really easy, unless the light isn't, I don't know, auto mode never really works. You know, it'll get you by and it'll get you a picture, but if you're looking at a group of pictures, they're all going to be a different white balance. Your camera is going to guess differently for every picture, and you're going to end up with a hot mess when you go to edit that. You're going to have to spend time adjusting that white balance for every shot to get it actually correct. Now, you can do things like you set in your camera for daylight, or you might set it for cloudy, or shade, or fluorescent. We'll just put FL for fluorescent, or tungsten. So you understand, like, you might check one of these boxes and say, all right, I'm shooting in tungsten light today. I know that all these light bulbs in here are tungsten light, so I'm just going to set my camera to tungsten and call it good, and that's going to get you really close. The nice thing is it's going to be consistent. So if you edit in Lightroom, you can batch process, change it just a little bit to one, and then it'll fix all of them. Now, the other thing you can do is you can program your camera into degrees Kelvin, and then you just dial it in. You say, all right, this light is 5,000 degrees, this light is 5,100 degrees, 5,200. They're usually in 100-degree increments, but you can dial it in very, very close. If you're shooting strobed, for example, and you know, you've read the documents on the strobe, the specs, and you know that they are firing at 5,500 degrees Kelvin, for example, you can dial in your camera 5,500 degrees Kelvin, and you get perfectly matched light that's coming out of your strobes, and you're telling your camera, this is the color of light that's coming in, so make sure to color correct so all of your color is perfect. That is an easy way to get you there and get it done. If you want a little bit more advanced method, you can pick up one of these. You take a picture of it in the light, so say these lights here are the lights that we're using, and I just make sure that that light is hitting this and my camera can see it. I get up nice and close to it, I take a picture, I tell the camera, hey, this is what we're going to use to determine our white balance. Or you can take a picture of the colored side here in the lights in the scene, like if you could hold it up next to your model, take a picture like this, then have your camera set to one of these manual modes, not auto white balance, but just do this for the first shot, set it right next to your model like so, or you know, the horse or the products on the table or whatever it is. Take a picture of your first shot, that dials everything in. Then after that, you can just click with the little dropper tool in Lightroom and then sync those settings across to all of the rest of your photos. Then you know everything is perfect white balance every time. It's super easy. Okay, it's pretty easy, pretty straightforward, right? To kind of correct for your white balance and have proper colors. Now, you can play with these colors and say maybe you have like a different mood that you want, and you want to make it kind of a bluish tone, and you're going for that kind of, I don't know, kind of sci-fi, kind of bluish tone, and that's what you want. And so you can change your white balance on purpose for creative reasons and not just have proper colors, but you can have whatever. If you want a more sterile kind of, sciencey background, whatever, you make it just a little bit blue and it looks more sterile and clean. If you warm it up a little bit, you bring it over here towards the yellow side, you can have a little bit warmer feeling image, maybe summer kind of vibes, kind of fall. Bring it down here towards more yellow and orangish, yellow-orange color. You can get into that fall. If you get all the way down here into that red, like Mad Max kind of movie, if you look at that sort of thing, they shot that down here where it's like that red, everything like looks really intense and warm, like extra warm. If that's the look you're going for, you can use these as a creative tool, which is super nice. Let me tell you one more like kind of pro level trick here, and I'm just gonna delete some of this, erase some of this, so I've got a little bit of room here to spare. But here's a creative trick that some of you guys can do if you have a flash. It could be a little speed light, it could be a strobe, it could be anything that makes its own light that you can use to sync to your camera. But anyway, say your flash is coming out here at 5,000 degrees, right? And you set your camera to 5,000 degrees, you're going to get perfect white. You're going to get, if you take a picture of something white, it's going to be actually perfectly white, which is cool, and your colors are accurate, and you can do 5,000, 5,000. You can set your camera here, and your light here. If they're the same, then your colors are going to be the same. They're going to be what you see in real life. They're going to be the actual colors of the thing. Like all of these colors would be correct. For example, my skin tone would be correct in this example, whatever. However, okay, say you take your light that's 5,000 degrees Kelvin and you change that, so now you've reduced it and you're down here into this yellow range. Say now you're 3,200 degrees Kelvin. Now that's going to be a really warm light. It's going to create a warm light right out of your camera, like color temperature orange. Sometimes they call this CTO down here. For example, we're going to be in that color temperature orange range. So it might not be exactly CTO, but we're down here, we're reducing it down into like this more yellow kind of a range, and that light's coming out, and that would make your skin tone very orange if you left your camera set to your normal white balance. But if you tell your camera, you set your camera now to 3,200, then you get whatever light is hitting your subject from your light that's hitting your subject, and you tell your camera that we're now at 3,200 degrees, then any light that's hit your subject is the proper color and the skin tone. But here's the trick. Anything that's behind your subject will be super blue. You might ask yourself, why is that? What this is doing here is we've got a lever and a fulcrum here. So what we're doing is we're trying to do white balance here. This is how you get white. This is the balance part. So if you increase a lot, put a lot of pressure here, it's got to go up here to keep the balance. So we got to keep everything in balance. I guess here's the, if you put, if you lower the temperature here, you have to raise the temperature here to keep everything in balance. And so the opposite of blue, so if you tell your camera, hey, we're going to shoot here in this range, well, the camera has to compensate by going here to make up for the difference, and then your blue, everything in the background becomes blue. Anything that doesn't get hit with that nice warm tungsten light, that orange light that's coming out here, that's way down here, it turns blue. So if you're shooting outside, for example, and that sky is really far away, that background is really far away. I'll put up an example here to kind of show you one that I did recently. But you can take this, put a nice warm light on your subject, tell your camera that's the color of the light, then anything else gets the opposite effect. So your camera has to really, adjust, make an adjustment to get proper colors on your subject. Your background turns blue. You make that sky extra rich and blue. It's a cool trick. It's easy to do in camera without any editing at all. Anyway, that's just one way that we can use white balance creatively. We can use it to have proper colors. So whether you're doing sale catalog pictures and you need absolute perfect colors all the time, those confirmation shots have got to be perfect, or you're going to step over here, do a little something creative, try to make some different changes. You can change this. You can add any color of light. As long as you tell your camera what you're doing, it will correct for that, and it'll change that background to something totally different. It'll be the opposite on the color wheel. So if you've seen a color wheel before, remember art class when we were kids, you've got this color wheel here with all these different colors on it, yellow, blue. These are opposites on the color wheel. So if you tell your camera that we're here, it has to compromise by going there so that you meet in the middle here and have accurate colors. So this is balance there. So I've written a blog post about this too. You can find that at equinephotoschool.com. And I show you how we can simply and easily just take a quick picture of something like this, a nice gray card or a pop-out gray card, and then tell your camera, hey, this is white, this is what we're going to use, and then your pictures inside of that arena are going to look like the actual nice natural colors. They're not going to be this ugly orange, yellowy, kind of weird grungy look, and they're not going to be too cool and blue and have people look like they're dying in there or their skin's turning blue. We don't want that necessarily, so you can adjust, make sure your camera knows the color of light that's coming in, and you are going to have a much nicer time when you go to edit those images and you share. You're going to sell more pictures because they just look so dang good. I'm glad that you're here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me here at equinephotoschool.com.